Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion around, the transformative power of mindset and shifting policies. We're so excited to have you. Welcome. I have my panelists here with me, and we welcome people to ask questions. So please do use the Q&A functionality to send in your questions. Please don't use the chat so we can find your questions and respond to them. We're going to jump right into the session first by introducing our amazing panelists today who are here to speak to us. My panelists will have a few minutes to introduce themselves and we'll get right into the conversation. So right on top of my screen, I see Dr. Israel Balogun. Can you please go ahead to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Shem. My name is Israel Balogun. I'm a person with disability. I'm a medical doctor by training. And also, I happen to be the first Nigerian to have won the Global Impact Social Award. For those who study in the UK, I studied at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine as a Chevening scholar in 2014, 2015. And I'm happy to be here. I've worked with World Bank, UN agencies, WHO, and so many other organizations. And currently, I'm a PhD student at the University College London, where I'm looking at assistive technology humanitarian setting. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Israel. Now I would call on Zara to please introduce herself.
Hi, I'm a equity and inclusion consultant. I am also a disabled person and I'm based in the UK. I have particular interest in research and training around EDI issues.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Zara. Now I welcome Robin to introduce himself.
Oluwaseun, thank you very much. My name's Robin Davies, and I'm speaking to you all from the UK at the moment. And I have been invited onto this panel on account of my involvement in a recent internship program for people with disabilities in the British Council office in Khartoum in Sudan. At a time of severe discrimination against people with disabilities in Sudan, this program gave a real work experience to about 20 people with disabilities over 5 years, thus opening them up for opportunities for longer term employment, both within the British Council and outside. So transformational change for the interns themselves, but equally important, I think, transformational change for the staff, for our partners, and for myself. So more about these changes in due course. So I will leave it at that for the moment, Oluwaseun, and pass the microphone back to you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Now, last but never the least, Jeeja.
Hello, everyone. I am Jeeja. I am from India. I studied in the university in 2005. I am a disabled rights activist and with particular interest is in gender and disability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeeja, for your introduction. So now is the time for us to really hear from our amazing panelists that we have today. Today's conversation will go from policies around, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, but also drawing close into implementation. What were the strategies being used? What were the challenges experienced? And what is the way forward for ensuring that we're shaping mindsets and policies in the workplace? To start off my question, I'd like to ask Dr. Israel and Zara to talk about what is the DEI issue that they identified in their country or even globally that they are pushing? How did they influence policy? Who did they engage? And, what support did you have to achieve the outcomes that you did achieve?
Thank you so much, Sharon. For me, one of the DEI that I identified was the issue of disability inclusion. Nigeria happens to be the largest country in Africa. Fortunately for us, about that same time, we just moved into democracy in '99, and several attempts were made to make sure that we have a legislation that will support the rights of persons with disability. Unfortunately, on 3 occasions, of course, it was passed by the Senate, but it failed. So in 2018, I was working with Christopher Blinding Mission in Nigeria, country office. So I had come back as a scheduled scholar. So all of a sudden, the bill disappeared from the National Assembly. I reached out to the then High Commissioner, Paul Ockright, and I told him about the challenges that we have about this bill. And he gave me his word. He said, look, he's going to make sure that he reaches out to the Senate President and the as a National Assembly member. And he did that. And within 3 weeks, he called me and said, Israel, they're going to pass this bill. About that same time, the Global Disability Summit was being held in the United Kingdom here in London. And I was asked, who are the strategic people that we needed to send by the British government? I mentioned James Lalu, who happens to be the current executive secretary of the commission, and also the Plateau State Governor, Simon Lalong. So everything worked together within a period of less than 4 weeks. The bill was passed by the Senate and the National Assembly in Nigeria. The main thing now remains the assent of the presidency, and in Nigeria, it's a little bit very complicated. So several advocacy were being made by organization of persons with disability. And at the end of the day, the president was faced with a dilemma of whether to assent to the bill or not. Fortunately, Simon Lalong, the then governor of Plateau State, walked in and told the president, he said, look, it's not a big deal. I have a disability commission in my state, and it's being run by a person with disability, who is the James Lalu. So the president, and he was able to convince the president assented to the bill. And today the bill is now in legislation in Nigeria. And we've been able to advocate, and it's currently in this implementation stages. And I'm really in touch, and I'm happy with the change that this bill has actually brought on multiple fronts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's very insightful to hear you talk about, the power of negotiation, because you're able to, negotiate with specific leaders, and the leaders were also able to negotiate with other leaders to pass the bill and get it, assented by the president. That's a huge feat. Congratulations on that. Zara, over to you.
So I have worked in disabled people's organizations for since I left university, actually, and I kept working and volunteering in these organizations and being told how difficult it was to find the next generation of leaders, how difficult it was to recruit disabled people, and how organizations were closing because they couldn't find the right staff to run projects and activities. And I kept hearing this over and over and over again, but no one was doing anything about it. So I applied for a fellowship to go and do research to look at what different countries did to support disabled leaders. And I applied for this fellowship, and I went for my interview for the fellowship, and they were like, why is this an issue? Why do you want to do this? This isn't an issue. No one's telling us this. Nothing. I went and did my research in Australia and New Zealand to learn from their practices, some good, some bad. And I came back and I produced a report, and I started talking to disability organisations and mainstream non-governmental organisations about what I'd found. And basically, I went from people telling me, why am I looking at this issue, to now everyone is talking about disability leadership. I have been commissioned to do more research looking at disabled people's experience in specific sectors in the UK. And I currently carry out more research for people on this topic. As a result of my research, a funding stream was opened in the UK to support disabled people's leadership. But 5 years ago, everyone was telling me this isn't an issue, and now everyone sees it as an issue and is trying to work on it.
Wow, thank you so much, for sharing that. And it's very insightful to hear you talk about what people do not categorize as a situation or problem. You know, for someone to speak up, it takes one person to speak up and say, this is the issue, and this is how I'm going to solve it. And you went ahead and did just that. And it's just very great to hear how research can also, you know, not just create data, but data that informs policies, that informs funding, and that informs advocacy in whatever capacity. So I'll move to my next two panelists, and you've heard from the previous panelists around what the issue was, and how they crafted policies and the activities or actions that they took to address these issues. But from your perspective, what are the initiatives you have implemented? And I'll start with you, Robin, because I recall you talked about an internship program during your introduction. Why was implementing that internship important for the British Council at the time, or the organization you were working with at the time? And how did you achieve a mindset shift?
Thank you, Oluwaseun. And much of what I'm going to say now actually reflects what Zara has just said. At the time, the British Council, the organisation I was working for at the time, EDI was very embedded in the British Council, globally, regionally, and in countries. But there was a danger of it becoming just a policy document or a strategy that was never going to be implemented, maybe a tick-boxing questionnaire. So we thought it was important to make something tangible happen, to see some results happen of this policy and implementing this policy. So the internship program we implemented over 5 years, and I'm going to shift now to the results, had the following results. And it was results that was important as proof of a successful implementation of the strategy. And we offered maybe 15 to 20 internships over 5 years. And the result was that some interns achieved a permanent employment with the British Council, allowing us to grow from an EDI-aware organisation to an EDI-confident employer within the organisation. Some achieved scholarships, Commonwealth scholarships, a Fulbright scholarship. Some achieved positions in INGOs in Sudan. Some achieved positions in government organisations, embassies in Sudan. So this was the result of what we implemented, putting into practice what otherwise would have just existed on paper. The change of mindset was important. Clearly, there was a change of mindset in the interns themselves as they grew in confidence, as they were valued. Equally important was the change of mindset in the staff who worked alongside people with disabilities. Again, they were as nervous at the start as the people with disabilities, asking themselves, how can this blind, slant, deaf, slant wheelchair user be as effective as I am, a fully able person in the job? How can that be? Within a short time, this illusion was dispelled and confidence grew within, for the people, the staff, as to how people with disabilities can contribute very positively to the organisation. That was one change of mindset. And I think the other change of mindset I will mention is working alongside people with disabilities gave an insight also into ourselves and our own disabilities, albeit probably invisible disabilities rather than visible disabilities. We became more patient, more tolerant, more respectful of each other. and more aware of, as I say, of our own limitations. So a hugely beneficial experience for everybody involved. I'll leave it at that for a moment. Happy to enlarge a little bit further with questions and answers.
All right, thank you so much for your response. We'll take Jeeja's contribution. Over to you, Jeeja. If you could please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Jeeja.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question?
Okay. If you'd like me to take the question again. So I was asking in terms of, working directly with people with disability, what are the policy changes you've implemented within your organization or within the expert networks that you're part of? And how did you achieve a mindset shift?
Okay. I will talk about the policy implementation in, 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 in India. So, yeah, I want to talk about one angle of a right good approach. In India, for a long time, disabled people were viewed as objects of charity. It so they were. It was only in the 1950s some disabled groups like people with vision impairment started granting their rights. But it was not until 1995 the first legislation on disability was enacted in India, and the main challenges were attitude, negative attitude, mindset, and belief in the charity-based approach. And when we had the law, disabled people were not united. And the implementation was very slow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeeja. And it's great to know that the bill for disability rights was enacted as far back as 1995 in India, in comparison to the situation that Dr. Israel Balogun had given us in Nigeria, which took, more years after that to get it enacted. So it's great to see that across the continent, actions are being taken to enact not just policies, but also systems that support diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially for people who have disabilities or who live with a disability. Thank you so much to my panelists for their responses so far. So we're going to have, a general conversation right now. As someone who has worked in the policy space or even shaping mindsets on gender equity and sexual violence prevention and response, I understand how difficult it can be, and it is, to get people to enact policies or to adjust, to change, or implement anything that has to do with human rights at all. And so I wanted to hear from you, as professionals in your different fields, what were the barriers you faced in either leading a policy or implementing a new initiative, and how did you mitigate the strategy? And the essence for this question is for our panelists, to our audience rather, to really hear key strategies you can use to mitigate challenges in policy shaping and mindset shifting. Anybody can start. Please go ahead and chime in.
Okay, is it okay if I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Zara.
So I've worked a lot in policy, and one of the things, well, there's two things that I think are important around this. One is people not understanding why an issue is an issue. Policymakers often hold very large portfolios, and they are not specialists in the areas that you are as a person working in policy. So quite a lot of the time, you have to explain the issue to them, even if they're the decision maker about that issue. So one of the challenges is getting policymakers to understand why your issue is important. And part of that can be done through joining with other people and organizations to raise the profile of the issue. Part of it is about education and just informing them in ways that are accessible to them. The second biggest challenge, and I think this is more for people that want to make change than for decision makers that have the power to. It is very, very, very easy to identify problems. It is very, very easy to say what's not working, or that this is a problem, or that is a problem. Decision makers, power holders, they don't have time to come up with the solution, and often people present them with problems but don't tell them how they want it to be fixed, and that can cause issues, because either it then means someone that doesn't really understand the issue is trying to put what they think is a solution but actually causes more problems, or they decide that it's too complicated and that they're just not going to touch it. So the thing that I found most helpful in kind of getting change made is to understand the problem and present a case for it, but also to present possible solutions. And one of the things that's really important for power holders is that you give them choice about solutions. You don't just say, this is the way you do it, because no one likes being pressured or forced down a route. You say, these are the things you could do. Pick what you want or what you have the budget for.
Thank you so much, Zara. It's very insightful. Dr. Israel, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Leaning on what Zara had said, you need to really engage stakeholders, actually, policymakers. In addition to that, bringing about policy change is very challenging, especially in developing countries where there are other priorities, that the government is looking at. For us, I remember when we're talking about disability, they say, how many are you? Of course, we don't have database. Nobody have an understanding of the challenges. And the best thing I realize is for us to look for allies, people that you can reach out to, that are strategically placed. You know, there are different levels of advocacy, the individual advocacy, self-advocacy. Then you need to be strategic in advocacy. So reaching out to people like the High Commissioner, who has a voice, despite the advocacy that we've made over the years, we've met with stakeholders, nobody responds. You need to look at the power strategy, power structure of influencers. So that's one of the things we engage in. And specifically, I will also delve into something that we did within the Shevlin Scholarship in Nigeria. So about that same time, we said, okay, let's promote the inclusion of persons with disability within the Shevlin Scholarship. And as I speak to you today, Nigeria, we made an advocacy to the British government and they accepted it. We also made an advocacy for the inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian setting, which was, of course, they supported us, they gave us money for an audit, which we use that to raise awareness for persons with disability, one. Secondly, from this Shevlin Scholarship, a lot of persons with disability got the scholarship. Some of them got distinction. Even as I speak to you today, I just spoke to one last week. She got distinction in law. And she's really excited. I mean, these are some of the feedback that people had. Whereas where she was in Nigeria, she never had the support system that would enable her to be able to excel. But when she came to the UK, with good support system, enabling environment, change of attitude, you know, she was able to excel. So focusing on the other thing, I mean, the last thing I want to lay at, I mean, one of the major barriers that we have, especially as persons with disability, is the attitude of policymakers and the society towards persons with disability. They look at us as object of pity, object of charity, as if we don't have rights. You know, sometimes they've taken a lot of advantage over us. I'm a doctor by training. Even from the medical perspective, they look down on persons that fix them. If you can't fix them, let them go forward to rehabilitation. But there is a holistic component to the lives of individuals with disability. We are part of the main society. And for your information, we are over 15. The current data stated that we are about 16% of the general population, over 1.3 billion. Like, I mean, Robin said, we have visible and invisible disability. A lot of people just look at the physical. So, but majority are actually the invisible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robin, do you have something to contribute?
In terms of implementation of this internship program, I'll refer, I think, to three specific barriers, Oluwaseun. Firstly, practical physical barriers, access to the building, IT, computer support, translating public documents into Braille, for example, funding. The mitigation is funding. We had to pay salaries to the interns. We had to pay transport for them to get to the office. So the first barrier, I think, is funding to break through these practical and physical barriers. We built a lift so that our building became accessible. That was £30,000, $50,000. It was not cheap. So I think this was mentioned before by, was it by Zara, mentioned funding, very important. The second one, I'll go back to the idea of perceptions. Very difficult to challenge and to beat people's perceptions that people with disability could contribute positively, immensely in many respects, not just to the local organisation, but to the global organisation. And the mitigation against that is a positive advocacy strategy. And we used to advertise what we're doing on the media, on television, local television, on the radio. We went actively and visited other INGOs and asked them to partner us in implementing such an internship program in their own organizations. So that was our mitigating strategy against changing people's perceptions. Internally as well, you know, there was a feeling that employing a person with disability was a charitable gesture, was a sympathy vote for a minority group. To beat that perception was very difficult, and the only way you can do it is by constantly advocating and getting people with disabilities to support you in this on every possible platform. The third point I'll mention, Adisa, is time. Time is a huge barrier. This is not a quick fix. Our internship program lasted 5 years, and we still didn't achieve everything we wanted to do. And we only had 5 years because suddenly the civil war in Sudan earlier this year and COVID and other terrible factors stop progress as fast and as far as we would like. So time is an enormous barrier, and we need to realise that we do need time, and it's concerted effort over time, and only then can we see progress. We will never be perfect, but we can see progress, and progress takes time.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you. Jeeja, do you have some points you'd like to contribute? Hello, Jeeja. If you're trying to speak, you're on mute. All right, so we will come back to Jeeja because I'm sure there are other questions that she would love to respond to. But I wanted to thank everyone so far for, the contributions you've made, and it's very insightful to hear the different mitigating strategies that people can use. But I also want to broaden the conversation a bit, because when we talk about DEI, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have workplaces where, they're not really keen on getting more, women into positions. They're not keen on representation in terms of gender, in terms of, nationality or ethnicity or racial differences, whatever it is. And thinking as an employee, for instance, let's say I'm an employee of an organization and I want to champion, DEI strategies in my company, but I also have the fear of losing my job, right? How do I mitigate such a situation? Because the idea is, the people on this call are leaders in their own rights. They either have their own organizations or they are working within organizations. So for those who lead, it might be easier to, sort of create these strategies or innovations. But for those who work for organizations, how would you, and we can have one or two people respond to this, how would you advise, or what strategies can they use to really get their voices out there without necessarily losing their jobs for speaking up? Yeah.
Okay.
I see Zara's hand up, and Dr. Israel wanted to speak. Please go ahead.
Israel, do you want to go first this time?
Okay, no, go ahead, Zara. It's okay, go ahead.
So I think we live in an age now which champions like individual leadership. And the first thing I would say, if you're in a situation where you have a passion about an EDI issue, who are your allies? It goes back to what Israel and Robin were saying. Who are your allies internally that you can potentially join together with, so you're taking less of a risk? So when it's more people than just one, it's harder to say we're going to fire everyone. Like, organizations can't function if they lose all of their stuff. So looking at who else might be affected by whatever issue it might be to join together with. I also think it's worth thinking about. I know people talk about it a lot, about things like burnout and stuff like that. Actually, what is the most that you can give without causing yourself harm? Because actually your well-being in the long term is the thing that matters most. Look, there are lots and lots of different types of activists and leaders, and you don't have to follow the same route that someone else has done. We can't all be Greta Thunbergs. We might be or Nelson Mandela. We might be a different type of leader or activist altogether, and that is fine. And I think it becomes really important to know what you are comfortable with. And actually, some of the biggest change makers in organizations are the ones that work slowly and quietly over long periods of time. And actually, by staying in the place and continuing to be a presence, they create change. Yes, you can also be like me and be someone that goes in and is very loud and does, but that may not be so sustainable. So think about what works for you as a person and the situation you're in.
Actually, over to you. Thank you so much, Zara. That was really insightful.
Well, thank you, Zara. I quite agree with her on virtually all the points she has raised. And just to say this also, for me, I think it also depends on the individual, the issue that you are going to be talking about and addressing. Some issues are very, very pertinent that you realize that you can't do it alone. You need partnership. You need to discuss with other people within your organization. You need to win them over. I mean, to like see from your own point. And most importantly, if you look at issues about gender, disability, and even race, you realize that you can't do it alone. You need to bring in allies to like support you. The other thing also is like you must be strategic. For me, sometimes I don't always call myself as an activist, but I wear two caps. I can be an activist and I also can be an influencer from behind the scene. I prefer the role of being behind the scene more, because then you're able to like build the capacity of others to go ahead. You keep them with the necessary information for them to speak to the right people, whereas you are just behind and monitoring how event goes. And then the other thing also, we need to be conscious of timing. You know, I'll give you a practical example. I was supporting the UN last year in UN Somalia on what's it called, the Disability Inclusion Strategy, which the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres introduced in 2019. And I was leveraging on the fact that the same approach for gender mainstreaming should also be applied across disability inclusion, because disability is a cross-cutting issue. It affects women, it affects men, and you know, using that principle, I was able to bring in allies from mothers with this, mothers of children with disability, people with disability that are staff, and even people that have relations with disability. So I mean, we're able to like convince them. So basically, there's no one size fits all. We just need to like understand the context and be able to navigate the complexity that is involved. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Zara and Dr. Israel Balogun, for their contribution. I heard allyship. I heard be strategic in your approach. I heard also take it slow. You know, sometimes when the issue is burning, you want to go at it immediately. And, you know, that's understandable, but also be strategic to think around when you need to expend so much energy and when you need to take it slow as well, so that you don't burn out. Those are very insightful feedback. We unfortunately lost the network on Jeeja's end, but we're hoping she'll reconnect with us in a very short while. And we're so excited to hear from her as well. Please feel free to send in your questions via the Q&A functionality. We'll try our best to take all of the questions that we have. In the meantime, I wanted to ask my panelists, you know, you've talked about what you've done. You've talked about the policies that have been, you know, adopted and implemented, or initiatives that have been implemented, but there's still so much to do. So what has changed? What would you say you're most proudest of that has changed? But importantly, what are the emerging issues the next generation? And when I mean next generation, I mean those of today, not tomorrow, not next tomorrow. The present generation, actually, you know, what should they be considering? What should they be doing in advancing, you know, DEI and also the sustainable development goals? And anyone should feel free to start.
Oluwaseun, I can mention 2 points. Okay, thank you. So I think what has changed over the years, let's say the last 5 years for me, has been much clearer targets in an organization when it comes to setting targets around EDI. This could be targets in terms of education, internal education of staff, training, particularly it could be also a target in terms of employability, employing people with disabilities. I think 5 years ago, there was certainly, for me in Sudan, there was a perception that 2% would be okay, 5% would be great. I think nowadays a 15% target as a target for people in employability is what is universally acceptable. I think that's a big change, a changed ambition, more acceptable amongst staff to be working alongside people with disability. So I think that's a big change. And then the other change has been EDI is no longer a part-time voluntary addition to somebody's responsibilities. It is, in many cases, a full-time job. And certainly the organisation that I worked for, the British Council, people are working full-time within various departments, cultural engagement, teaching, exams, providing full-time EDI advice to make it a much more inclusive organisation, not just internally, but also externally. So I think two big changes there, Oluwaseun, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much. And it's great to have you back, Jeeja. Just wanted to take the question again, because we'd love to hear from you. We've talked a lot around policies and initiatives that we've all implemented or seen across the globe. And we're asking, what is one thing that has changed, or two things, or five things that have changed that you're excited about? But importantly, what are the next set of actions that, you know, the generation right now should be taking or considering in advancing inclusion and the sustainable development goals?
So in the context of India, a big break in the disability came with the United Nations and with United Nations Convention on the rights of persons with disability. And India was a signatory to the convention. There was a lot of agitation in India to change the existing laws in tune with the UNCRPD, and there were two lobbies. One lobby wanted amendment in the law, while the other lobby advocated for a new law. Finally, a new law committee, new draft committee was formed, and in the year 2016, we have a new law that rights of persons with disabilities act, though it is not as progressive as we want it to be, but it has brought in some changes. And what is important is in India, we had disability specific movement like visually impaired, hearing impaired, but after the UN CIPD, we have seen somewhat the disability community coming together, though it is not what we want to be. And though there are many differences, but I would say that was a positive change after the UN celebrity.
Thank you very much, Jeeja. Dr. Israel Balogun and Zara, do you have anything to contribute to the question?
Thank you so much. Yes, I do. Just to say this, with the advancement of technology, technology makes it possible for virtually every one of us to be able to connect with ease. I want to focus on the use of technology for persons with disability, because to some extent, technology does enable persons with disability to be able to compete on an equal basis with others. It also enables them to be able to work from home. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic actually showed the world that you can work from home remotely, remote working. And then the other thing I also want to focus on, for me, I follow work primarily. I work in the field of humanitarian setting. And globally, you can see a lot of wars are happening. The use of assistive technology is something I'm interested in, and a lot of needs is really arising in the field, and there's need for collaboration with organizations of persons with disability to work on issues of assistive technology. Then the last thing I want to focus on, legislation have been passed. We have good legislation, we have policy, to some extent is in different contexts, but implementation remains a challenge. There is a need for us to engage with stakeholders, private sector, government institutions, to look at a form of allyship or partnership that will facilitate the inclusion of persons with disability in the society. The challenge people face is this: they think that they will all be forever, they will all be healthy. Disability can happen to anybody at any point in time. And the aging process also makes one way that you discover that when you grow old, you either fall into our category. Disability is a club that everybody can join. So the next thing is for us to prepare ourselves for such, to think about, to be futuristic about our being as a whole. With good innovation, with good strategic engagement, we can all be the change influencer in our various contexts. But I would want to arrest my case at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zara.
I'm going to talk about EDI more broadly, just because we've focused a lot on disability. And I think, just to say, the fact that we're having these conversations is evidence of the level of change that has happened in the last 10 years around EDI across all areas of EDI. It would be unfathomable even 5 years ago to have these conversations so openly and so transparently, and it's evidence of just how much movement there has been and will continue to be. I think in your question you asked, what do I think still needs to be followed up by the new generation? And I am going to say, I don't know, because part of that question is about actually the people that are in this webinar, who are the next generation or the now generation, you know what the issues are. It's not what are the issues for you will become the issues that we are talking about in 5 years' time, because you're pushing them. So probably the things that need to change, the things that need to drive cultural change in the world are things that people aren't talking about at the moment, because people on this call haven't mobilized yet to tell people that this is an issue that we need to do something about. So I think the thing I would say, I guess, is if there is an issue that you feel no one's doing something about, do something about it. Don't wait for other people to, because they might not even know it's an issue yet. And that's the joy of like people power and change, that change happens because people raise awareness and drive conversations. And so what could be an issue in 10 years time is going to be driven by that thing that really annoys you, that itches at your skin, that you want to do something about.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that. Taking into account our time, so I'll just take a few questions real quick. But one thing that Dr. Israel Balogun said that really caught my attention was, disability is a club everybody might get into, and that's the reality. Because you do not live with a disability today doesn't mean you might not live with one. Hopefully you don't. But if that happens, it's okay. What we're asking for is a system that supports your right, that supports your well-being, that if that happens, maybe through injury or through violence, whatever the case may be, which we really hope doesn't happen, but that you get the support that you need. Because there are people who were born with disabilities, right? It's not something that you can wish away. It's something that they were born with, and they have equal rights with those who were not born with disabilities. So this is like a very interesting and insightful conversation for me. So I will throw some questions at different panelists. I know, Zara, you sort of responded to one, so I wouldn't throw that question to you. I'll speak to somebody else. In terms of, how can we make, our workplace accessible for color-blinded employees? And the person was asked, or was asking rather, is color blindness considered a disability? And Zara had mentioned that it depends on the country, but in a case where someone is living with color blindness, how can you make the workplace more accessible for them? I would send that to Dr. Israel. I have another question here around how can we use the concept of DEI in teaching? I will send that to Robin. And for Jeeja and Zara, please feel free to answer the question around how can we make slow learners feel motivated? I don't know if you're categorizing slow learning. Of course, it's sort of like a learning disability for those who have autism or who live with certain conditions. Some of them, not all of them, have impediments learning quickly. So how do we keep them motivated is the question. Over to the panelists.
Let me quickly respond to the first question. Visual impairment is very, very broad, and it actually falls under disability, especially when you are colorblind. So there are different levels, different category of impairment that you can categorize as disability, though that will be for another discussion. However, there's what we call the principle of universal design. Like this system you have that every one of us is using, it has some certification, it has some accessibility features. When you employ the principle of the universal design, you have limited input to make little adjustment. For instance, when Robin was talking about having to construct what's it called, probably a RAM within the British office, British Council office in South Sudan, if they had built that building using the principle of universal design, I won't be there for that. I can give you a practical example. In Nigeria, when the British High Commission, the new office where they are, when they built that environment, I audited the environment. And they used the principle of universal design. The place was very, very accessible. There was just only 2 or 3 things that we need to adjust. So basically, using the principle of universal design can help. And additionally, for people, if let's say somebody is working in a different office, the remote working can serve. And also there's this color chart that we have, color combination, what we call, color selection. If you look at WAC 2.2, which is more like for web design, for people that are designing ICT documents and, you know, making them in accessible format. There are some guiding principles that we all should imbibe. And I think the British government, in fairness, they really want to like say this to some extent across multiple of their platforms, even in the middle of the developed world, they are adopting that, like having PDF in accessible format, having features that will make some of the things that we use regularly to be in an accessible format will be a better deal. Just to say, finally, I would say the provision of reasonable accommodation should be a must in any organization. Pregnant women, women do have maternity leave. That's part of reasonable accommodation. Okay, you know, you can go on maternity leave. So also disability should also be part of that thing. And I remember ILO is doing a lot in that regard. So there's need for us to embrace the global trend in terms of employment opportunities and strategies and policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Robin, we'll take you real quick and then we'll go to Jeeja and Zara.
I think the question was about education.
Yes.
How can we, okay, well, do you know, people with disabilities, they live in a different world. They have different challenges and different perceptions, of course, and they live at a different pace with different capacities, different physical and mental processes. And we only begin to realize this once we've had the benefit and privilege of working alongside them. What a pity this isn't included in education formally at all levels, primary and secondary and higher education on a regular basis. That would be an easy thing to do, I think, to make it part of a curriculum. Secondly, it should be, of course, part of people's professional development in the workplace. As part of mandatory training, this awareness growing to confidence in working alongside people with disability. I have to say, when I see people with disabilities working at that interface between shops and the public on the tills and on the cash points in supermarkets, at receptions in public organizations, I just want to go and congratulate them on achieving so much in their journey. And the people should realize how difficult it is for people with disabilities to break down these barriers and to get to these positions in society. And I just wish people understood better the challenges that they all face to overcome. And it has to be part of education, formal education.
Thank you very much, Robin. Over to you, Jeeja.
You know, I think I'll try to answer the question about learning disabilities. Actually, a change in curriculum that can change in the method of teaching, learning needs to be changed. And there needs to be a more practical-based approach, activity-based approach, where people learn by actually doing, not learning from the book. I think this would help people with learning disabilities to learn faster and remember more. The more activity-based, the more activity-based we make learning, the better it everybody, not only for people with learning disability.
Thank you so much, Jeeja. Zara, we're just about on the hour, 30 seconds. Just go for it.
So I actually have a learning disability. I have dyslexia. And I think what Jeeja was saying, the important thing here is not how you motivate someone with a learning disability, but actually, or someone that is slow at learning, but actually, what are you asking them to do? Are you giving them the options to do things differently in a way that will work to their strengths rather than trying to get them to conform to how things are normally done? I think a lot of the time people put the problem on the individual, but actually it should be, why is this system inaccessible for someone? How are we doing things and how could we do things to get the best out of them rather than expecting them to do things that they're not good at?
Thank you so much, Sarah. We are now on the hour, so we do have to end this lovely conversation. I'd like to thank my panelists. Thank you so much for the insight that you've brought to the conversation. Thank you to the audience as well for joining the session. There will be a poll right now. We encourage you to please share your feedback about the session, and also please to connect in the networking zone, get to meet people. And the next session, which is Leading with Joy, Mindful Integration for a Joyous Tomorrow, starts in 30 minutes. Thank you very much, everyone.